Hey guys, my name is Daniel Stockard and I'm a writing coach at the Michigan Tech Multi-Literacy Center. Today in this first part of our two-part series, I'm going to be giving you some helpful information on some of the trends that you find in literature that I've learned over the course of my education. Hopefully by the end of this, you'll be able to decode literature a little bit better. Main things that we want to talk about here is moving past the affective level of interpreting literature. And what I mean by that is that when you read the literature, you're responding just to the events that happen in the literature, the characters and their individual development. So kind of a real surface interpretation of the book that you're reading or the work that you're reading. And we want to move past that towards more experienced literature interpretation. And when you reach that level, you're able to connect those different events to other examples in literature. And we want to focus on this idea of intertextuality. And that's the idea that works in literature influence and reverberate throughout one another. No author was ever an island. They always read other things. They had influences from people who came before them. And so if we have a better understanding of some of those influences, it might allow us to understand the literature that we're reading a little bit better. So what we're going to start off with is a discussion on some of the fundamental motifs of literature. And what I mean by that are the dominant structures in literature. We're going to start off with a discussion about the quest. And definitely this is the most apparent and obvious different motif. And so you have your protagonist who's called to action from some event that happens that disrupts their idyllic life at the beginning of the novel. And they're striving to reach some sort of holy grail. And what I mean by that, it's not like the literal biblical holy grail, but some sort of payoff or reason for their journey. But that stated reason, the reason that they think that they're going on that journey is not the important part. What's important is the process of that journey and what they learn along the way. So one of the best examples of this is The Hobbit, where Bilbo Baggins is kind of wrenched out of his perfect life in the Shire by when Gandalf stops by and the dwarves want to employ them as a burglar on their quest. And Thorin says that he wants to retrieve the Arkenstone from the dragon Smaug. But that's not really the point of the book. What's really important is that Bilbo finds his courage and transforms from a cowardly and complacent hobbit into an awesome hero. Okay, so two more motifs that we're going to talk about are the fall and the initiation. So in the fall, you see a character who falls from grace. Or a descent into madness. And this usually happens because of some sort of self-created situation. So in King Lear, the old king wants to retire from governing, and he gives his estate to his daughters, Regan and Goneril, largely because they win him over with flattery, even though they don't actually love him, and their reasons were entirely self-serving. And the good daughter, Cordelia, refuses to flatter him, but truly loves him. And it's a long story, but this decision leads him into madness and causes a whole lot of problems for Britain as a whole. And that's, one of the trademark Shakespearean tragedies there. Another example that almost everybody knows about is the story of Icarus, where him and his father escape from a prison by crafting wings that let them fly high above the ocean. But Icarus got too ambitious, and he tried flying higher and higher until the light from the sun was so intense that the wax that held it all together melted, and he crashed into the ocean and died. And so, we have characters who choose something that might be ill-advised, and it kind of drives the plot into usually not so great of a situation. And in the initiation, you have a character who usually moves from a position of innocence into some sort of maturity. And this is usually somebody young, somebody who's not prepared for the events that unfold. And another name for this is Bill Dungserman. That's a German term. So in To Kill a Mockingbird, Scout transforms from an innocent youth into an aware young adult when her father chooses to defend a black man for a crime he didn't commit. And this takes place in the deep, deep South. And there's a lot of backlash against her family because of that. And she's kind of forced to grow as a person in order to deal with that. So now we're going to talk about some supernatural characters for a little bit. And so one of the most common characters is what's called a vampire. And that's somebody who exploits the main character, dominates others, and lusts for something. And it's important to remember that they don't have to be literal vampires. Not every vampire is going to be Dracula. One of the best examples of this is in the book Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Alec D'Urberville is the manager of an estate who lusts for Tess, the main protagonist of the novel. And despite her insistence that she's not interested, he keeps on coming at her, and he ends up raping her and stealing her innocence. And when she flees to be with the man she actually loves, he follows her no matter where she goes. And he ends up driving her to commit an act one would think is impossible of the girl, and she loses her life because of it. And throughout the novel, his presence just leads her into an increasingly desperate state of mind, like it's draining her vitality. And that's kind of what they mean by a vampire, like something that's sucking the main character's life force. Another type of supernatural character is a ghost. And what they usually simplify is this amiss state of affairs or previous business that's not laid to rest. It can be somebody from the character's deep past who kind of shows up out of nowhere to remind them of some previous event that happened. And so in A Christmas Carol, Marley was a former business associate of Ebenezer Scrooge. And after he died, he was damned to haunt the earth because of his greedy, selfish, and uncaring attitude towards others. He comes back to warn Ebenezer of the consequences of his actions, and he really sets things in motion by arranging the ghosts of Christmas to come and show Ebenezer the error of his ways. And in both cases, these characters are emblematic of larger things that are wrong with society.